everyone. I'm here today with Jennifer Jornet, who, have I pronounced that right, Jennifer?
It's actually Jornet.
Jornet, sorry.
Yes, it is.
I was pretending I was back in French class. Jornet, sorry about that. So today we're talking with Jennifer about her children's book, which has been recently published, but obviously it's hard to get the word out during COVID. So we thought it would be great to have a little interview. Now, Jennifer, can you tell me a little bit about why you wrote this book?
I wrote this book. It was something that I've wanted to do for many, many years. It's a story that I told my own children when they were babies. The character of Chickaboo just came to life. So it's been an oral history with my own children.
Great.
So every night we go to bed and I'd say, well, what adventure will Chickaboo go on tonight? And the children would decide where they'd like the story to go.
Yep.
And over the years, it's been sitting in the back of my mind.
Yeah.
And 5 years ago, my grandson Luca was born. And as I held him in my arms, I promised I would write him a storybook.
Great.
So, and whenever he came to stay, even when I was over there as a baby, I would tell him the story of Chickaboo.
Yeah.
And then he started to embellish the story.
Great.
And that's how we came about.
Yeah, so it's a collaboration.
It is, absolutely.
Yeah. So what was it like to, well, first of all, you would have found your illustrator. Was that someone you already knew, or was it just someone you looked around and you found somebody? How did that come about?
My sister actually works in a special school.
Yeah.
And the illustrator is an artist in her own right, but she's the art therapist.
Ah.
And I wanted someone who was young, someone who had a little bit of naivety, a bit of youthfulness about her, a little bit of the wicked about them. And this is how I came across Nicole. I never met her.
Yeah.
This book was written during COVID, during the first lockdown.
Yeah.
So we communicated by email and by phone. And she had no idea, so she went purely on my descriptions.
Yeah.
As well as, a couple of photographs and images that I sent her to give her some direction. And she agreed to illustrate it for me.
Yeah.
So it was her first venture as well.
Oh, that's great. And so another collaboration. Did
Absolutely.
You find, because I find when any time that I'm working with, or any time you're working with any art forms, sometimes it's hard to get what is in your head. It's hard to articulate something to another person. Did you find that hard, or did you find that you worked pretty well together?
I think we worked pretty well together. She did have some ideas and I had some other ideas, but we worked through those again through email and phone calls. And I actually sent her a photo of my grandson, so she could get a sense of, what he looks like, the little hair sticking up on his head and that sort of thing. And she managed to capture it so beautifully.
Great.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I think it's gorgeous. And it does really capture the wonder of children, where if you go to the park, everything is new and exciting to them, and that's what I feel you've captured with your book.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and that's what picture books are about, aren't they? They are about developing a love of story for children, but also encouraging that, and that's what I love about your story about making up the stories with your kids and Luca, is that we are forever being imaginative and telling stories, and it doesn't matter how silly they are. It's about the joy of telling those stories and the joy of discovering new things.
I think there's enough serious stuff happening in the world today.
Yes.
Without contributing to it. So this is purely escapism for children.
Yes.
And it's an innocent escapism.
Yeah. And what I like about your book is because a lot of people write children's books because they want to send a message. And quite often it's very obvious. And kids really don't, they instinctively reject that kind of thing when they feel like they're, you know, something's being very didactic and very, you know, prescriptive. And even though there is a little bit of a message in there, it's so subtle and it's not, well, it doesn't feel like it anyway. It doesn't feel like it's on purpose, and it doesn't feel like you're trying to get a message across to kids, but they will get something from it about having an adventure.
That's right.
Yeah.
And just the wonder of being outside, the wonder of seeing things in a different way.
Yeah. When you were, what are some of the picture books that you loved, either as a child or when your children were young?
When I was growing up, the very first book I read, I actually didn't read picture books.
Yep.
The very first book I ever read was Little Women.
Okay.
So I was in primary school.
Yep.
But I was still able to draw a picture in my mind of what these characters looked like.
Yeah.
When my own children were growing up, it was books like Animalia, and how would I put it? You know, The Cat in the Hat, things like that were bright, were happy.
Yeah.
Absolutely lovely, just beautiful.
Yeah, fantastic. And now that you have, well, how did you find the process once you had, you know, obviously had the words and then you had the pictures? How did you find the process of it coming together into a published book?
I seriously started thinking about doing this in 2019. I joined a U3A writing group, and I wrote my first draft there. And that's where I more or less got the structure of the story. And I pretty well tweaked it over the next couple of years.
Yeah.
So, and I just put it down, come back to it, put it down, come back to it. I found the process absolutely gripping because it drew me in every day. I would sit at the desk and I would see something a little bit different. I would change a word here. I would move a sentence somewhere else. I deleted a lot.
Yeah.
I would read it aloud, and then I sent it off to a few people to read it for me, and took on board their feedback.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's really important. I think a lot of people think that, oh, it's so easy to write a kid's book because it might only be a few hundred words. How hard can it be? But in actual fact, I think it's harder because you're trying to, first of all, talk to a younger person, but you're also trying not to, you know, be very obvious about any messages, but you also want to entertain them because they are the harshest critics. They'll soon tell you if this is boring or what have you. And I really believe that the development of the text is really vital. So well done to you for actually going through that process, because a lot of people don't. They just, you know, they write it in a night because they get an idea and they think, okay, this is publishable. And quite often it's a long way from that. How was it for you when you actually saw the book in print?
It was the most exciting experience I've had in a very long time. I remember I was on the phone with a friend of mine, and Australia Post arrived at the door with this box. And I said to her, just hang on a moment. I couldn't wait. I opened the box and I remember saying to her, it's my book.
Yeah.
It's my book. I was so excited to see it.
Yeah.
You know, the physical copy, and with, you know, the beautiful cover and beautifully presented and bound, absolutely lovely. And being in hardcover, it seemed more like a gift. It was a gift to me receiving that in the post.
Yeah.
And that's what I intend it to be for the children and parents who are reading it, as a gift to them.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That's a really good way. I never thought of it like that. I feel the same way when I open boxes, even if they're not my own books. When they come here, I feel so excited because there's so much. I don't think people realize how much of a process it is to get from an idea in your head, develop it and get the illustrations, and then, you know, work with the designer to get the book into print mode. I don't think people realize that there's a fair bit of work in there. And so when you see the printed book and smell it, because, you know, there's a definite smell and tactile feel about a book, it's exciting. I still get excited, and I've worked with about 500 people to publish their books. So it's very exciting, and I think there's nothing better than actually having something physical. You know, about 10 years ago when ebooks started to come in, people were saying, you know, the book is going to die. But I think that reading is a very tactile experience, as well as it's not just about the story. I feel like sitting there with a book is very different to sitting there on the computer or on a tablet or something like that. So it's very exciting. And I think it's really good for kids to learn to read with real books rather than on an iPad or something like that. So you're keeping it alive.
I'm keeping it alive. And the thing is, I've done it with your help because I didn't know how to go about it. Somebody recommended you when I went to a publishing workshop. And I contacted you when you held my hand through the whole process. So I'm very grateful for the help that you've given me, because I would not have known where to go.
Well, thank you. I'm humbled to be honoured to actually be part of the process, because it's a very personal process too, I find.
It is.
And so you do have to hold someone's hand. It's not just, you know, you're not just producing a report or something. It's something that's very personal to you. So
you're treading the line between your emotion and the practicality and the business side of it. And you know, you're bringing it all together. So without crushing me. So I was really pleased that you did that.
Good. Well, now that it's out, how have you had any feedback from people?
I've had feedback from Luca. He absolutely loved it. So we would read it often. He actually lives interstate, so I haven't physically seen him with the book. So he would have his copy, I would have my copy. He'd be in bed. He'd put his head on the pillow just like the character does in the book, and we would read the story.
Oh, that's gorgeous.
And it was lovely because my son was with him at the time. He generally puts him to bed. So he was there listening to the story that he initiated as well. So it was lovely to see the 3 generations together reading this.
That's cool.
It is. And people who have read it, I mean, most of my friends are either teachers or work in that sort of field, and they loved it as well. So I'm really pleased with the feedback I've had with it.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you so much for chatting with me today. Have you got more books in the work, like in your head?
Oh, there's a first draft written for another one already.
Great.
Hang on to that.
It does get addictive.
It does. So I have got the first draft written for Luca's little sister.
Great.
So she's quite a different child. It'll be quite a different story.
Great.
And it won't be Chickaboo. It'll be something else. But she's a more bubbly, very adventurous little girl.
Great.
And so I'm really looking forward to seeing that one come to life.
Oh, fantastic. Well, thanks for chatting with me today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I really look forward to seeing the next one and seeing this one actually in people's hands too, because I think that's really important.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Blaise. Much appreciated.
You're welcome.